I've often thought, in fact, Austin and I were talking about this on the walk over this morning, and as I prepared for these remarks, I've often wondered if we were to meet somebody that would, if we had met Lincoln, who would he remind us of today? And for the life of me, I think he was unique. Maybe some part Ronald Reagan, you know, the storyteller, the guy who had the quip. But he was a down-to-earth guy who had that Southern twang. Yes, a Southern twang. Remember, he comes from a family that had immigrated from Virginia across to Kentucky. And Southern Indiana is also very Southern in its sensibilities. He had that Southern twang, kind of a high voice, not an aristocratic bearing at all. So part Reagan, part, I don't know. I mean, Will Rogers. Yeah, Roy Rogers, too, maybe. Out there on the frontier, you never know. Will Rogers is a good guess. Will Rogers is a very good guess. Maybe you solved my dilemma. Who said that? Two of you. Okay, very good. I like that. Yeah, maybe a Will Rogers, Ronald Reagan cross. So Lincoln has this ability to connect with people. Where did it come from? Well, if you know that you're ugly, and if you know that you have these long limbs that make you look awkward, you've got to do something else in your life to make yourself stand out from the crowd. What you have to do is develop your wit. Don't we see this happen in kids all the time when they're growing up? I mean, some kids are just naturally really smart in the classroom, and maybe they don't develop other sides of their personality, or some kids are naturally great athletes and they rise to be the jocks, and they don't develop other sides of their personality, whatever it is. Sometimes we see that people who are perceived to have initially some disadvantages develop their personality in a way to make them stand out and more attractive to people. And that's what I think Lincoln did. We know, for example, that when he would go to the little Baptist church on Sundays, his parents would take him, that he would come back, and the first thing he would do when he got back with the other kids is he would entertain them. He would weave those long legs into the fence rails, and he would tell the sermon all over again, but this time he would do it so it'd be a lot funnier, a lot wittier, and the kids loved it. Lincoln was always able to gather the other kids around him. That was one of his qualities, and he would use that quality for the rest of his life. That storytelling quality, that humor that made him so attractive to people. So the first thing we would notice as Lincoln started to engage with us, if he were to walk into this room, is his ability to put us at ease, to tell the stories that make him connect with us, and to keep us laughing at him and at ourselves. And all those are wonderful ways, of course, to draw those connections with people. He would use these skills, of course, all the way up through the end of his career. These skills were certainly developed when he was a circuit rider. Remember, he becomes a lawyer, self-taught, and he's a circuit rider. That means that he spends 3 months in the spring and 3 months in the fall riding around the largest district in Illinois. And when he's out there either taking a buggy or a horse or later a train, he's out there in his career going through this large district for 3 months on the road at a time. He was a star. He was like a rock star in rural Illinois. People loved it when he came to the county seat and he would argue in the courtroom because they could count on being entertained. People would come in to the court just to watch him. It's like turn on Nancy Grace at night or something. What's Abe going to say today in the courtroom? He, again, used that storytelling ability. And truth be told, lawyers who've gone back and looked at the hundreds and hundreds of cases that Lincoln argued, and let's be clear about this. Lincoln was a trial lawyer, which one of the ironies he's the founder of the Republican Party, because trial lawyers, of course, support who? The Democratic Party today. But Lincoln was a trial lawyer, and he was often a big corporate lawyer for the biggest corporation of the day, the railroads. So that's Lincoln. But when you look at how he actually handled his cases, lawyers have examined the merits, and a lot of these cases that would have been a draw, Lincoln wins. Why does he win? Not because he has the stronger legal case to make, but because he has the humor and the personality, the stories to win juries to his side. And he knows he has that talent. And he does pull it. He gets a lot of people out of a heap of trouble from his ability to argue cases in a courtroom with such skill because of that storytelling, and not necessarily on the legal merits. Though legal merits, of course, he was a great student of the law, self-taught. Legal merits he would certainly pluck out when he had to. So Lincoln impresses us on the circuit. Also, what happens when he's finished in the day, arguing his case in court? What happens at the end of the day? Everybody goes to a tavern to bed down for the night. And they tighten the ropes, sleep tight. They tighten their ropes for the bed. And 2, 3, 4 guys get in a bed. Yes, that's the way it was on the frontier. It doesn't mean a thing. Don't go there. This is common practice on the frontier in America. You and I would be in the same bed if we were in the court that day. We would. Whoa. We would. Common practice. And during those hours in the taverns, the entertainment was to trade stories. And again, Lincoln was the rock star out on this large circuit. People enjoyed it if he were going to be coming to their tavern that night because they knew a lot of people would be entertained by his storytelling and his jokes. If people were irritated by anything about Lincoln at this point, it was that when it was time to tighten those ropes and everybody, would go to bed, Lincoln would continue to burn the candle or the lamp. And he would continue to read into the night because what he was doing was thinking about his cases the next day or a speech he would have to make, his opposition to Douglas or whatever it was. That's what Lincoln would be focused on. So he would not be turning out the light as early as other people would want him to. So those are the skills that Lincoln honed as a storyteller, as a raconteur, as the funny guy, that stood him in good stead through his entire career and enabled him to connect with people. He knew that leadership is about relationship, and he knew how to forge that relationship through his stories and his humor. What's the second thing we would notice about Lincoln? He comes into a room. I think after we would start to talk to him, after we would get behind some of the funny stories and all, we would see that this is a man with immense passion for what he is doing. Once he started to get serious and talk to us about what he was trying to do with his life, you would see he was a passionate man. How did this passion express itself? In a number of ways. For example, when he was a young man, it was clear that he wanted to leave the farm. He did not like farming. He did not want that dirt-poor existence on the frontier. He respected the people whose families would come and work hard and be able to build up their assets and improve their lives. He respected that process, but it wasn't for him. So he expresses his ambition by learning the law, teaching himself the law. He certainly didn't have the opportunity to get a formal education. I always draw the distinction between education and schooling. Lincoln would have been the most educated man in this room, but he would have been the least schooled. Do you know how long he went to his formal schooling? 1 year. He got just enough reading, writing, and ciphering to the rule of 3 in that 1 year to lay a foundation for him to learn many other things. So it's not his formal education. Many people's passion and ambition is expressed. They go to the best schools and all that. This wasn't going to be Lincoln. He did not have the opportunity on the Kentucky and Indiana frontier to do so. Again, he has to teach himself. If he wants to rise, he's got to become a lawyer. So what does he do? He starts hanging around as he takes flatboats down the Ohio and he travels and moves goods around. He goes to courtrooms. He talks to judges and lawyers, and he says to himself, I could do what they're doing, and I could do it just as well, maybe even better. Lincoln did have self-confidence. He had a vision of who he could be.